Exactly. Also, it's probably the same yard set as Brooke.
Which broke? From President?
Hamshi Brooke.
President.
The gold, she was a gold one. Yeah.
Yeah.
She, today's, I know that today was
Ches or Zayn?
a mistake. I heard Moshe,
No,
Moshe and Shmuley talking about it today. They're going to the oil.
I guess it was. All right, said it. So we're going to learn the Maimon Habaim Yashresh Yaakov, which is a Chavdalet Tevis. Maimon Chavdalet Tevis, of course, is the yard site of the Alter Rebbe. So this is Habaim Yashresh Yaakov Tavshin Memches. So it says in the pasuk Habaim Yashresh Yaakov that the Pashta Taich of Habaim Yashresh Yaakov is, according to Rashi, that those who came. Yeah. Okay, so the pasuk says Habaim Yashresh Yaakov that those who came to Mitzrayim, Yaakov Avinu planted them. Yashresh Melashon of Shirashim, of roots, that Yaakov Avinu planted the Yidden, Bnei Yisrael, in Mitzrayim, like we have in the Psukim of Chitas these days, and Yatzitzu Parach Yisrael, and then from that came afterwards that the Yidden blossomed and sprouted and grew. So that's the Pirush of Rashi. The Pirush of Rashi on the pasuk of Habaim Yashresh Yaakov is that it's talking about when the Yidden came to Mitzrayim. Yaakov Avinu came, went down to Mitzrayim, just a few Yidden. So that was like planting in the ground, where you plant something very small. And what came out of it is Yatzitzu Parach Yisrael. 210 years later, the Yidden became a great nation. 210. 210 years later, the Yidden were a great nation, and they left Mitzrayim as a great nation.
Said that the women used to give birth to 5,
6. Yeah. Yeah, and in a short period of time, from 70 people, or with Yaakov at 71, became a massive nation. So it's talking about the times of Mitzrayim. However, or maybe at Tzemach Tzedek when Mamari Ibn Maschil said that Tzemach Tzedek brings in his Maimer on this pasuk. Pirush HaTargum Yenison Ben Uziel ala pasuk shezekoy ala gula. The Targum Yenison Ben Uziel actually teaches it that it's talking about the Gula Amitis Vashlema, and he teaches it like this: Shatargum dahabayim hu yiskanshun mi bnei galvasein v'suven la'ahain, that the Yidden will be gathered in from the various places of exile where they are all over the world, and they're going to come back to Eretz Yisrael, to their land. Which this is going to be when Mashiach comes. That the Eibustor will bring us back to Eretz Yisrael. And then will be this idea of Yashresh Yaakov. How does the Targum Yenison teach it? Taman Yisyalidun de Beis Yaakov. Over there, the Yidden will be born. The house of Yaakov will be born over there. Because this is like he's going to point out, this is an opposite type. If you're going to say Yashresh, that then they're being planted, so that's the beginning of the process. But the Targum Yenison teaches the word Yashresh, not that they're being planted, not the beginning, but the end, that they're being born. Tzedek explains the Hashrasha Yashresh, when you plant something in the ground, when you put the roots inside the ground, so that's a state where things are hidden. It's covered in the ground. Like when you like the roots of a tree. The roots of the tree that are in the ground, you can't see them. When you're walking, you only see the tree that grows out of the roots, but the roots you don't see. Veleda and birth, which is the way Targum Yenison teaches the word Yashresh, Hugilut. That's a state of revelation, an idea of something becoming revealed. When the fetus is in the mother's womb, it's hidden, you can't see it. When it's born, so now it's revealed. Now you can see there's a whole child, there's a whole human being there. So l'chura, it's contradictory. The Yashresh, it's not the same thing.
It's different words.
It's different words. Maybe it's built Muga then.
Yeah, it's built Muga.
That's the built
Muga. I don't know.
So what are we going to do? You want to take a phone? Should I give it to you on the phone?
No, there's upstairs another one. Yeah, okay, I don't even want to look at. No bad. Whatever, I'll go get one. I think we have one.
Next time I'll ask for copies.
I'm so sorry.
It's not it's our fault. We don't have copies. Ukeshenela, so when the child is born, so now you can see the child. And this that the Targum Yenison teaches the word Yashresh, the roots, that they're the concept of birth, of revelation. Who Shesherish Anashama Yashresh Yaakov Begilu Yisraelidun. What the Targum Yenison is telling us over here is that the Sherish, the root, the deepest and highest part of the neshama, which typically is hidden, Begilu Yisraelidun, will be revealed when Mashiach comes. So in today's times, in the times of Galus, and even in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, before Mashiach Tzidkenu, you don't see the highest level of the neshama. The level of the neshama, that's the way it is in its source, in its root, you don't see it. When Mashiach is going to come, the source of the neshama will be revealed. Okay, so
which level is Yechida?
L'chura, it's higher. Usually when you say the Shirish, it's even higher. In other words, it's Yechida, but the way Yechida is, there's Yechida the way it comes down into the level of the neshama, and there's Yechida the way it exists in its source, before it became a neshama. So usually
Inside Hashem.
it's in Hashem. That's usually what it means. When it says the Shirish and its source, it means to say the way it stands within Hashem, within Atzmos. We'll see later in the Maimah exactly what it's referring to over here, but in general, it's even higher than Yechida, because it's in its source. Okay. Umamshich b'haMaimah, right? First b'Yashresh Yaakov, the Tzemach Tzedek continues in his Maimah. Another explanation in the words Yashresh Yaakov. Shezakoy al kiyum hamitzvos. Yashresh Yaakov, the roots of Yaakov, or Yaakov being planted, that's the performance of mitzvahs. Just like when you want to put roots into something, when you want to make roots and that they should grow. So where do you put it? You put it in the ground. Al derech zahu b'neshama Yaakov. So too it is in the neshama, which this is referenced in the pasuk with the word Yaakov. Shahashrasha he became mitzvahs ma'asiyos. That you root things dafka when you perform mitzvahs in action. Say the mitzvahs, all of the mitzvahs. In other words, you have different ways of serving Hashem. You have serving Hashem through the study of Torah, right? And you have serving Hashem in davening, and even in mitzvahs, you have certain mitzvahs that are chayvas halavavis, that are mitzvahs of the heart, yediyas Hashem, knowing the Eibishter, and obviously the famous ones, avas Hashem and yiras Hashem, to love Hashem and to fear Hashem. So those are mitzvahs, but they're not mitzvahs ma'asiyos. So he says Hashrasha, when it says Yashresh Yaakov, we're talking about the kiyum of mitzvahs in Maisa. Okay? Which this is like on the lowest level. The first explanation is probably better on the phone. At least it will be the same text. Yeah. You have Maftech? Okay, Maftech.
Where do I go to?
I'm sending you a link.
Square. No problem.
Service is our goal, like what they have in the company. We aim to please rate us. Okay. So what's the connection between these two pirushim? The pirush that Tzemach Tzedek brings from the Targum Yenison, that Yashresh means the revelation of the neshama, of the source of the neshama. And the second pirush that the Tzemach Tzedek brings, which is that Yashresh is the kiyum of mitzvahs, because the roots are in the ground, and the kiyum of mitzvahs is bigger, the mitzvahs ma'asiyos, the mitzvahs that are in action, which those have to do with the lowest levels. Because this revelation of the source of the neshama, which will be when Mashiach comes, b'karev mamish, so that, how does that happen? What brings that about? The performance of mitzvahs. Doing mitzvahs now is what brings about the revelation of the source of the neshama, la'asid lavei. Okay? Now let's see what's going on. So you want to know before what exactly is Sheresh and Neshama? So it looks like he's going to discuss it. I didn't look at the Maimah before, so I'm not sure. I didn't realize I was going to discuss it. But here we have a discussion. No, I'm saying, so here he's going to discuss what is Sheirosh HaNeshama. In the Sheirosh HaNeshama, there are several levels. The Iker Sheirosh HaNeshama, who the primary place that we call this is the source of the neshama is the way the neshama is rooted in the oil that's higher than Hishtalshalos. And this light that's higher than Hishtalshalos is brought down, is drawn down into the world after through performing mitzvahs. Okay, so just in one word, Seder Hishtalshalos is the levels of light that the world typically has, that the world has by default. When the Eibishter made the world, he created it with the spheres of Atzilus, which this is Seder Hishtalshalos, and that's the natural state of the world and the level of light that you have in the world. Okay? However, when we do mitzvahs, we draw down light that is from higher than Seder Hishtalshalos. So he's saying that if you want to reveal the Sheirosh HaNeshama, which the Sheirosh HaNeshama is higher than Hishtalshalos, so you do mitzvahs, which this brings down the light that's higher than Hishtalshalos, and through that you reveal the source of the Neshama, which is higher than Hishtalshalos. Why dafka mitzvahs? What do you draw down into the world when you learn Torah? That's the level of Chachma, which Chachma is Reishis HaYishtalshalos, the beginning of Seder Hishtalshalos, the first Sfira in Seder Hishtalshalos. Drawing down the air that's higher than Hishtalshalos, that's dafka through performing mitzvahs. This is the famous Pirkei Avos, that whoever's actions are greater than his wisdom, so he's compared to a tree which has very few leaves and a lot of roots. Right? What's the mile over here? It says in Pirkei Avos that you shouldn't be like a tree that has a lot of leaves but very few roots. In other words, the tree looks very beautiful when you look at it, but it's very fragile. It could be tipped over by the slightest wind. And that's a person who's very, very wise, but he doesn't do a lot. So his wisdom, it's like floating over ground, just like the leaves are above the ground. On the outside, he looks very, very great, but there's a lot missing in him. He talks a good talk, but he doesn't walk the walk. He doesn't do the actions. And he's very unreliable and very not useful. So the Pirkei Avos says that you have to be like a tree which has many roots and a few leaves. In other words, your actions should by far exceed your wisdom, and then your wisdom will be sustained. So the mitzvahs are like these roots compared to the leaves of the tree, which is the Chachma. And how does he explain it according to this Maimer? Because what's the whole idea of Chachma? Chachma is the level of the neshama, and you want to have a revelation of the neshama. So to have a proper revelation, even of the chachma, it's dafka through the mitzvahs, which they draw down the higher level of the neshama that's higher than Hishtalshalos. Okay. And this is the connection between the two pirushim, the two explanations in the words Yashresh Yaakov, by performing mitzvahs in today's day, which is the second pirush in Yashresh Yaakov. Nimshach Sheirosh HaNeshama, you draw down the source, the root of the neshama, and the revelation of this Hamshacha will be La'asid Lava. Yishalidun de Beis Yaakov, that's when it will be born, that's when this revelation will be revealed. Sheirosh HaNeshama Yer Begilui Pirush Rishon B'Yashresh Yaakov. Okay, so the Seder is like this. By default, you don't have a revelation of the Sheirosh HaNeshama. You do mitzvahs in the time of Golus. You draw down the revelation of the Sheirosh HaNeshama, but you can't see it. Mashiach will come, then you will see this that we're drawing down now, the revelation of the Sheirosh HaNeshama. That's when we'll be able to see it. Make sense? Okay. According to what it's known, that even the order in which our Rabbeim say Ma'amarim, everything is exact, and he can learn something from the order of Ma'amarim. The revelation of the Sheirosh of the Neshama, of the source of the Neshama, which will be comes after and only through the performance of the mitzvahs now. However, the Tzemach Tzedek in his Maimer first explains the pirush of the pasuk according to the Targum Yonasan, that the revelation of the Yidden will be la'asid lavai, And afterwards, the Tzemach Tzedek brings Ba Pirsh Yashresh Yaakov Kaik Al Kima Mitzvahs Achshav. That Yashresh Yaakov is referring to the performance of the mitzvahs now. It should be faket. If the order is that we do mitzvahs now and then la'asud lavui, we see in a revealed way what we drew down through performing the mitzvahs. So that Tzemach Tzedek first should have explained that now we do mitzvahs, and when Mashiach will come, we'll see it. Why does he first bring the Pirush in Yashresh Yaakov that la'asud lavui there'll be a great revelation? And he tells you, by the way, you're wondering where did that great revelation come from? It came from what we're doing now. It's a backward seder, go in the order of the way things happen. And the second question is, in the first explanation of Yashresh Yaakov, which talks about the Geula, so the Tzemach Tzedek also explains the word Habaim. Let's see. In the first explanation, it says Habaim Yashresh Yaakov. Then when Mashiach will come, that Habaim refers to the time when we come to Eretz Yisrael, which will be when Mashiach will come.
That's when you have Ma'aseh Mitzvahs.
No.
Reiv Mitzvahs Ma'aseh from others.
That's a good question, but it's
No,
not what he's saying over here.
That's the connection to Eretz Yisrael.
No, he says over here, Habaim Yashresh, you went to get a sefer when you said it. He says Habaim, you could see in the brackets all the way in the beginning of the Maimon, Habaim Koya, Al-Bil Eretz Shetiya Begula Asida. It's talking about coming. Yeah.
But I'm saying, but in the beginning of Ma'amshav Ba'amayim, it says, Pirish B'Yash Yash Ve'Alkim HaMitzvahs.
Without Habaim, though.
Oh.
So he clearly doesn't say that it has something to do with Eretz Yisrael. So it's a Yashish. So the word Habaim is not negate the second Pirish of performing the mitzvahs. Okay. In the explanation that Yashresh Yaakov, this is a reference to the Yidden performing mitzvahs. There's two Eifanim. Shahashrasha de Yaakov, he became a mitzvahs canal. V'shahashrasha de mitzvahs, he be Yaakov. You can explain it in two ways. One way is that how do you bring out the root, the source of Yaakov, which this is the neshama, you reveal it through the mitzvahs. The second one is that if you want to plant the mitzvahs, if you want to root the mitzvahs in something, you root the mitzvahs in Yaakov, in the Yidden. You understand? Two ways of looking at it. Yashresh Yaakov, whose root is through in the second pirish? It says in the first pirish, Yashresh Yaakov means that you want to bring out the source of Yaakov, the source of the neshama. You do that through sheresh, through the roots of the mitzvahs. The second explanation is that Yashresh Yaakov means that you want to root the mitzvahs, you want to put the mitzvahs into something, so put it into Yaakov. So these are two different explanations. Just like when you want to plant something. In the literal sense, you plant things in the ground. When you want to plant the mitzvahs, like it says, the mitzvahs have to be planted dafke within the Yidden. Why dafke by the Yidden? Because dafke the Yidden are called the land that the Eibishter desired, so they're compared to a land, and that's why dafka, the rooting of the mitzvahs could be dafka in, and the planting of the mitzvahs could be dafka in the Yidden. And that's the continuation of the pasuk. That through Yashresh Yaakov, you have later the plants grow. The Yashresh Yaakov koyal kima mitzvahs achshav. Yashresh Yaakov is a reference to doing the mitzvahs now. That's like planting the seed in the ground. That the mitzvahs are planted and take root in Yaakov. And through this, you'll have later the growth of the mitzvahs, which is Yatzitzu Parach. Okay. I'm not sure how to put together the different ideas over here. The mitzvahs to be Yaakov. So there has to be dafka in the Yidden. So one explanation we did before already, explaining that Yashresh Yaakov means the source of the neshama, and that's going to be revealed l'Asid Lavei through the kiyum of the mitzvahs. And the other one is that he's saying that Yashresh Yaakov means like this: if you want to plant something, you have to plant it dafka in the ground. So you have these mitzvahs that you want to plant. So you have to do them in Yaakov, because Dafka Yaakov is called an Eretz Chayfetz. And when you do the mitzvahs in Yaakov, so then you'll have the growth of the mitzvahs, the sprouting and the growth of the mitzvahs, Lasid Lavik. Okay. The Pirush Habaim Yashresh Yaakov, who in Teda, where he's talking about the Kiyum HaMitzvahs, so over there he explains the word Habaim. In order that you should be able to do mitzvahs in such a way that it gets planted within the Yidden. That came dafka through the introduction of coming down into Mitzrayim. As it's known that the going down into Galus Mitzrayim was a preparation for receiving the Torah. So before the Yidden could do mitzvahs, before the Yidden could be a place that's a makom roy, that's an appropriate place to do mitzvahs, first you had to have going down into Galus and Mitzrayim, and after through that we got the mitzvahs. Just like the Galus of Mitzrayim was a preparation for receiving the Torah, so too the current Galus is a preparation for the revelation of Pnimius HaTorah, which will be when Mashiach comes. So just like before the Yidden were able to get mitzvahs, they had to first go to Galus Mitzrayim. So too before we can get the revelations of Pnimius HaTorah, of the hidden parts of Torah. When Mashiach comes, we had to go into Galus, in the Galus that we are in right now, and only through that can we get the revelation of Pnimius HaTorah. It's the end of it already. We just have to see it. But Poel Begola, like the Rebbe says.
Egypt was 400.
210.
Yeah, but now it's been
2,000.
Couple of thousand.
2,000. Yeah, so it's time to finish. Shleimar. That the final Golus that we're in right now is a preparation to receive the Pnimius of the Torah, the hidden parts of the Torah, the inner parts of the Torah, which will be lost by you. So according to this, the words Yashresh Yaakov makes more sense. The connection between Habaim and Yashresh Yaakov makes sense, or is sweetened, is better.
And you have a strong flow. You don't have water.
Because when it says Habaim Yashresh, it makes it sound like the dafka through going into Golus, you have this idea of the planting of the mitzvahs. It says like this: so when it comes to the Golus and Mitzrayim, Habaim, going into Mitzrayim is only an introduction, a preparation for the Yidden getting the Torah afterwards. Shalidei Golus Mitzrayim Kura Barzel, through going down into Golus Mitzrayim, which this is the Kura Barzel. It's the what is it when you make
The molten part.
the molting? Yes, but it's and it refines the gold, it refines the metal, it separates the impurities from the metal, and then you have a pure metal. So nitzrufu Yisrael is b'chinas eretz chayfetz. So then the Yidden were refined and purified to become a land that they have their desires in. And through this, so their performance of Torah mitzvahs after they left Mitzrayim and after they received the Torah is an eifin of Yashish. In other words, you had like this. When the Yidden went down to Mitzrayim, they still had within them impurities. Because of those impurities, so if they would receive the Torah, you wouldn't be able to have this idea of Yashish. The mitzvahs wouldn't be able to have the same effect because of the impurities that the Yidden had in them. They went down to Mitzrayim, they removed those impurities, and now after they left Mitzrayim, they could get the mitzvahs. So when they were in Mitzrayim, they had nothing to do with the mitzvahs yet. It was just a preparation, purifying them, so that they could get the mitzvahs later when they leave Mitzrayim. And that's why he explains that the final goal is a preparation for the Gili of Lasid Lavei. Which according to this Habaim also references the Goliaths that came after Mitzrayim, including this final Golus. According to this explanation, Habaim Yashresh Yaakov him inyan echad. The being in Golus and the actual hashrasha, the actual act of planting, is actually one thing. שההשרש דמצווה בישראל שעל ידי זה תהיה צמיחה לעשות לווי, היא בעיקר והמצווה שישראל מקיימים בזמן הגולוס. That happens primarily in the mitzvahs that the Yidden perform at the time of Golus. Like it says in Tanya, are dependent on our actions and our Aved, our service of the Eibishter, in the time of Golus. So in the second page, she explains like this: when it comes to the Kima mitzvahs and Golus, the Hashrasha is actually at the same time of the Kima mitzvahs. In other words, you have the performance of mitzvahs not in the time of Golus. And this does not accomplish the meaning of Hashrasha. Afka mitzvahs that we perform in the time of Golus, not when we're in Yerushalayim, not when we have a king, a Jewish king, not when we're in a situation of Cherus. We do mitzvahs afka in the time of Golus. So these mitzvahs have a special quality to bring about they create the Hashrasha, they draw down the revelation of the Pnimius HaNeshama. So, and he says, like the Alter Rebbe actually says this in so many words in Tanya, that he says that all of the revelations of La'asad Lavei are dependent on our Maseinu v'Avedasenu, but not in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Alter Rebbe doesn't say it was dependent on Maseinu v'Avedasenu b'chlal. He says Bizman HaGolus. So the great revelations of Mashiach is dependent dafka in us being in Golus, and dafka now, which is already a very encouraging thing, because nobody's happy to be in Golus, and we don't make peace with it. But as so long as Chas Shomer and Golus another minute, we should know that the revelations of Mashiach can only be created through our work over here in Golus. Like it says in Hayom Yom, when Mashiach is going to come, when Benken sich, that when Mashiach is going to come, we're going to long, we're going to miss the times of Golus because of the great Aveda that we're supposed to do. So now we just want to get out of Golus, and we can't stand one more second. And even the idea of thinking that there's something positive in Golus is a little hard to accept, or you have to reject it. But it says that when Mashiach is going to come,
it's never enough. I mean, what's going to be when you're going to be already? We're going to be in the.
We're still going to miss it. That's what it says.
When is it going to be
peace and tranquility?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it will be peaceful. But it says that we're going to miss the times of Golus. Because then we have the special work of Golus. The performance of mitzvahs in the time of Golus is something that is extraordinary. Shleimar says the Rebbe, so this was all based on the Alter Rebbe's explanation in Torah, but the Tzemach Tzedek doesn't mention any of this. That it's connected to Habaim. That Yashresh Yaakov, the performance of the mitzvahs, has to do with Habaim, with going into Golus. He doesn't mention it. Because this, let's see over here. Let's see. Either I typed it wrong, or he's saying, or he's making a finer point. This that the Geluim D'Lassi Love are dependent on our Aveda.
You're already weighing Gimel, no? I mean, you're in the middle.
No. We're doing it via Shlema, the small paragraph.
You're still in that. Okay.
Yeah, the small paragraph in the middle. Kizesh Hageluim, the second line of the small paragraph. Kizesh Hageluim D'Lassi Love Geluim B'Maseinu V'Aveda Seinu. It says this, that the revelations of L'Asud Lavei are dependent on Maasenu, on our work, is dependent on our work in all times. Wait, no, hold on. I think there's two different things. Hein Bizman Habayis, even also in the times of not of Golus. Sign the times of the Beis Hamikdash Hayim, when we weren't in Golus. Hein Bizman Golus. Because both of the Avedas have a Maila. Looks like the Rebbe is going to be discussing this. However, Yashresh Yaakov, the Tzemach Tzedek is explaining different than the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe is explaining that the Giluim of L'Asud Lavei are dependent, Dafke on the Aveda in the time of Golus. However, the Tzemach Tzedek is giving a different explanation, that there's actually also an advantage to the Aveda in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore the revelations of Mashiach are also dependent on the Aveda in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. It's very interesting. Okay. It looks like we finished like the opening of the Maimer. So the opening of the Maimer is L'chora, that you have this idea of Habaim Yashresh Yaakov. Let's make a short summary, and then we'll learn one more Osim Hashem. You have the pasuk Habaim Yashresh Yaakov, and there's two explanations in Habaim Yashresh Yaakov. One explanation in Yashresh Yaakov is that we are bringing about the revelation, that there's going to be the revelation in the time of Mashiach, of the source of the neshama, and the other one is that you perform mitzvahs. Yashresh Yaakov is that you perform mitzvahs, and he explains that. How does he put them together? He explains that the revelations of La'asid Lave are dependent dafka in the performance of mitzvahs that we do either in the time of Golus or in the time of the bias. So we have two explanations over here. One explanation is that it's dependent on the Yisraelidun, the Habaim Yashresh Yaakov, the revelation of La'asid Lave is dependent on the performance of mitzvahs in the time of Golus. Or the explanation is that it's dependent on the performance of mitzvahs during all times. Okay? So in order to understand what this is all about, we have to get back to understanding what is mitzvahs. If we're saying that mitzvahs accomplish so much, and we're saying that there's different details. There's the mitzvahs in the time of Golus, and there's the mitzvahs in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. So let's first understand what's this thing in mitzvahs. Now we're starting Gimel. And the advantage that we mentioned earlier, that mitzvahs are higher than Chachma, they're higher than Hishtalshalos, and they draw down the light of Hishtalshalos. So in the Maila of mitzvahs, compared to Torah, there are two things. First of all, is the explanation that we mentioned before, that through performing mitzvahs, we draw down a higher light. Through Torah, we draw down the light of Chachma, which that's part of Seder Hishtalshalos. And through performing mitzvahs, we draw down the Eretz of Shalom Alam Hishtalshalos. And then there's a second explanation. The second advantage in mitzvahs is that when you do mitzvahs, you have the mila that you're transforming darkness into light. Because refining the person's body and his animalistic soul and his part in the world is primarily through the performance of mitzvahs. So, first of all, I just want to observe that we have to get used to it. In the Ebbes Torah, you constantly see these three categories. Probably also in other places in Chassidus. I'm familiar from it, from the Ebbes Torah. You have the birur of the guf. You have when the yid does mitzvahs, and b'chlal in the yid's aveda, he has to refine his body, which that's the physical corporal body, and then he has to also refine his nefesh habamis, which that's already a soul, that's already a spirit, and then he also has to refine chelkei ba'ilam, his part in the world. So you have different avedas, you have different types of serving the Eibishter, which refine the body more than anything else. And then you have different ones that have to do with refining the nefesh habamis, the animalistic soul. And then you have the work of working with your part in the world, because every single person is not only responsible for himself, but every single yid is also responsible for a certain part of the world, or of the universe in general. And when he serves the Eibishter, he elevates that part of the world.
Refining the body hasn't got not to do with the animalistic soul. Refining the body.
The body and the animalistic soul is not the same thing. The body is a physical body, and the nefesh habamis, the animalistic soul, is not a physical thing. It's a spiritual thing that gives life to the body. So they're two separate things.
So you're refining the body through mitzvahs?
So he says all three is done primarily through mitzvahs. And that's so therefore we take the body from a condition of darkness, we take the nefesh habamis from a condition of darkness, and we take our part in the world from a condition of darkness, and we transform it into light. And that can only be done through doing mitzvahs. When you learn Torah is more about the nefesh elikis. It's not about the body. Torah is the Eibishter's Torah. It's a holy thing. That has more to do with the nefesh elikis, with the godly soul, not with the animalistic soul. To transform the body, the animalistic soul, in your part of the world, that's primarily through mitzvahs, which are done in action, which are done physically, which are done down here in this world. So we have over here two explanations. One is that mitzvahs draw down a higher light, and the second one is that mitzvahs transform darkness into light. So what's these two ideas? Drawing down the higher light is more emphasized, and it happens more when you do mitzvahs when the Beis Hamikdash exists. Because drawing down a light through performing mitzvahs is primarily when you do mitzvahs bebittul with complete nullification to the Eibishter. And since the idea of bittul is primarily in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, and let's see that was going to explain it in the brackets. Right, completely bowing, and not the way we do by Yom Kippur davening, but pishut yadayim v'raglayim, completely flat on the ground. That was only done in the Beis Hamikdash in the time of the Bayis, which shows on a higher level of bittul. Shabbat, so true ishtachava is only in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Shabbat dafka mitzad hariyah belikus. This bittul can come dafka when one sees a likus. That now we can't serve the Eibishter properly the way we were able to serve him. Why? Because we can't go to the Beis Hamikdash and to be seen and to bow before the Eibishter, or to prostrate ourselves. Over here, he's being medayik. That's dafka pishtu daim v'raglayim before the Eibishter and the Beis Hamikdash. To kim and say on yechelim lalis v'leiros v'meila and on yechelim lishtachavois. Why can't we bow and prostrate ourselves before the Eibishter? That's because we can't go to the Beis Hamikdash. Because in our times, in the times of Golus, we don't have the ability for this pneumistic bittul. So therefore, hinegama bittul hachitzenius. So therefore, also the chitzeniustic bittul, which is the bittul decree of bowing, which comes from comprehending a likus, which we have in general, also in the time of Golus. However, However, it's not b'pnimis, it's not the way it's supposed to be, and therefore the bittul chitzoni is not the way it's supposed to be. Kimin shegam hasaga b'likus shebizman hagolus eina hasaga amitis. Okay, so Aklal, he says like this: to be bottled to the Eibishter, a likus has to be very real to you. If a likus isn't very real, so it's an intellectual knowledge, but it doesn't change the person. It doesn't make him completely bottled. Bittul Re'iyah is the idea of knowing something on the level where it's absolutely real to you. When somebody sees something, right? If somebody tells you this and this happened, then somebody else comes to you and says, no, he tells you something else happened. So you don't know who to believe. However, if you saw something with your own eyes, so nobody can tell you different. When you see something, it's very real to you. And somebody could give you a million explanations, and your answer to him will constantly be, but I saw it with my own eyes. It's very real to you. It's also that when somebody hears something, when something is explained to somebody or described to somebody, so first he listens, and then he understands. Then it becomes real to him through the listening. When somebody sees something, first he knows that this is the reality, and only afterwards he understands. In other words, first he understands it, then he knows it. That's when you're listening. However, in the E, it's the other way around. Just seeing something makes it extremely real to you, and then you understand it afterwards. So the E represents this concept, this idea that it is absolutely true, and you get it completely, even if you don't understand yet, but you get it completely. So he says that this level of knowing the likus, even of Re'iyah, of seeing that you have dafka had this man Beis Mikdash Hayekayim. And since the likus was so real to the Yidden when the Beis Mikdash was Kaim, so therefore they were completely bottled to likus. A likus was real to them, so they were bottled to it. In the time of Golus, we could understand a likus, we learn a likus, we try our best to make it the most real that we could, but this complete and absolute bittul we can't have, because it's not real enough to us. In our conscious mind, living here in this world, it's not real to us. And that's why we're not bottled. So so therefore, the drawing down of a likus that happened in the time of the Beis Hamikdash was on a higher level, because, like I said before, in order to draw down Eretz Elyonim, you have to be bebittul. If you're not bebittul, so when you do mitzvahs, you're talking doing a mitzvah, and there's something else in it. But Hamshacha is lacking, because for that you have to be bottled. So that was more when Mashiach in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Baladei Hamshacha Shalidei Mitzvah the Ikar Hamshacha Shalidei Mitzvah Lasid
What
Lavoi.
happens when you battle? I mean, we go to daven in the morning,
Mhm.
feeling, we try to do our best to concentrate and what we're saying. So this is not. It's a level of it's not a level of bittul.
It definitely is a level of
This
bittul.
is but when you're talking about that bittul, kind of
It's a lower level of bittul than that. The bittul that was in the time of the Beis Hamikdash was much higher,
much higher. Okay,
was much deeper, was much more real than anything we can achieve now.
More with the one with every year.
It's very easy to understand, right? When somebody is sitting and davening, and he wants trying to make himself completely bottled to the Eibishter, and then the Eibishter, as the Eibishter does, sends him somebody to upset him. Mit the mall, he gets upset. I don't know, how'd you get upset? You were trying, you started Heidu, Bittul, you started today with Maidani, Bittul, and then somebody, I don't know what, throws, whatever, does something, pushes you or whatever it is, and suddenly you're upset. So it's not pshat that the bittul is insincere. It's not pshat that what you were doing that you were a fake. The pshat is that it wasn't deep enough because we're not capable of it. We tried as much as we could, and we attained a certain level of bittul, but it didn't go deep enough. There was still something of us left, and therefore we're still capable of becoming upset even while we're davening. The bittul that he's describing in the times of the Beis Hamikdash was l'chura, a type of a thing where the person was completely bottled. Where does upsetness come from? There's a famous story with Reb Aaron Strasheller. Right, Reb Aaron Strasheller was one of the students of the Alter Rebbe. Not one of the students of the Alter Rebbe. He was the greatest student of the Alter Rebbe. Bigger than Zalman Zezman, who was Rav Hillel Partz's teacher. Reb Aaron Strasheller was the greatest l'chura, the greatest Talmud of the Alter Rebbe. However, there was a Maisa Satan, and he was a Chavrus with the Mittler Rebbe. There was a Maisa Satan, and he had a machlekes against the Mittler Rebbe while the Alter Rebbe was alive already. There was some kind of machlekes, and Reb Aaron Strasheller's people came to the Alter Rebbe, and he told the Alter Rebbe that Reb Aaron Strasheller felt as the people of the Mittler Rebbe are disrespecting him. That the Mittler Rebbe's people are disrespecting him. So the Alter Rebbe answered them. He told them, who asked him to feel? The problem is that you're feeling. If you're feeling, then you might get upset. Oh, so Alter Rebbe was sending a message back to Rabbi Strasheller that there's something missing in your level, and that's why you ended up in this problem, that feeling remained in you. In other words, the level of bittul wasn't complete. Rabbi Strasheller was a tzaddik, just so we know what we're talking about. There's no... The Alter Rebbe's greatest chassidim went to him that he should be their Rebbe in the beginning. Many of them came back after.
In the perfect bittul, there must be some kind of feeling of fear.
That's not you. You're feeling the Eibishter.
When there's yesh misha, when perfect bittul is when there's nothing. You're nothing to you. You're totally given over. Once you have that, you love. If you like something, and that's why you're doing it, you're bottle, but it's not a real bittul.
You feel without thinking about you that it's you.
But still, there's behind it is all about you.
It's your neshama that feels, even if it's the neshama. So the point is that if somebody can get upset during davening, you see that he's feeling. He feels. If he didn't feel, he wouldn't get upset. Just like Rabbi Strasheller, if he didn't feel, so no matter what the Mittler Rebbe's people did or didn't do, it wouldn't upset him and he wouldn't have any tightness. He feels. So we feel also. So you see the bittul of the bias is man bias sounds like it's something deeper than that. Okay. The Iker Ham Shach Shal Mitzvah Yelasidla because he came a mitzvah. Kuf Ches. Yeah, the first line. Kuf Kayach. The Iker Hamshacha Shal Mitzvah Yelasidla and the main Hamshacha, the main drawing down of lights of Eris from the Mila will be when Mashiach comes. Okay, which then there will be the performance of the mitzvahs according to the Eibishter's will in the complete way. So we have like this. There's two nekudas in mitzvahs. In mitzvahs, it's either hamshacha, where we bring down the lights that are higher than this world, higher than Ishtalshus, like you said in the Maimon before, or there's the din of Ishapcha, where we're mahapech hashechel in Aheda, we transform darkness into light. So he says like this: drawing down lights that you have with the mitzvahs outside of Golus. The mitzvahs in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, and at an even higher level, the mitzvahs la'asid level when Mashiach will come. However, when it comes to the second aspect of mitzvahs, that's primarily done in the time of Golus. Transforming darkness through mitzvahs is primarily in our days, in the days of exile. The three departments of cheshach that we mentioned before: the darkness of the body, the darkness of the animalistic soul, and the darkness of the world, as they exist in the time of Golus. Is an even greater darkness than their natural state of darkness. And through performing mitzvahs in the time of Golus, which is the time of the ultimate darkness in all three departments, of all three departments. So when we do mitzvahs in the time of Golus, we take the ultimate darkness of the body and the animalistic soul and the world, and we transform that into light. If the idea of mitzvahs is to transform darkness into light, so when is the ultimate level of that? When you have the ultimate darkness. When a person does a mitzvah in the ultimate darkest time in the world, and when his body is in the lowest level, and when his nefesh habamis is at its lowest level, he does the mitzvah then, not in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, certainly not in the time of the of a lost level when there will be no darkness whatsoever. So dafka then he's transforming the lowest levels of darkness into kedusha. Make sense? Okay, so those are Tzvei Inyanim in Kiyum HaMitzvahs. One of them you have mainly Hamshachas, drawing down lights, you have mainly in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, and even more so in the time of Mashiach. Transforming darkness into light, you have mainly in the time of Golus. Okay, I'm going to stop here. Continue Mitzvah Hashem next week.
So, yeah.
Okay,